Good evening, ladies. Thank you for joining us today. For those who might not know, you are here to share a harrowing experience you both went through a few months ago. Could you start by introducing yourselves and telling us where this all began?
Good evening. My name is Emma, and this is my best friend, Lily. We both live in the city, but we decided to take a break from the hustle and bustle and spend a weekend in a cabin in the woods. It was supposed to be a peaceful retreat, but it turned into something far more terrifying.
Yes, it was supposed to be a simple getaway. We had heard about this beautiful cabin in the middle of the forest, and it seemed like the perfect place to relax and reconnect with nature. We arrived on a Friday evening, and at first, everything seemed fine.
Can you describe the cabin and the surrounding area for us?
The cabin was a charming old wooden structure with a large porch and a stone chimney. It was nestled deep in the forest, surrounded by tall, ancient trees. The air was fresh, and the only sounds were the rustling of leaves and the occasional call of a bird. It was idyllic at first glance.
Absolutely. The forest was dense and beautiful. The cabin was well maintained, with a cozy living room, a small kitchen, and 2 bedrooms. We had everything we needed for a comfortable stay. We even brought a few books and some board games, thinking it would be a perfect weekend.
And when did things start to feel off?
It was the first night. We had just finished dinner and were sitting by the fireplace, enjoying the warmth and the flickering flames. That's when we first heard it, a faint whispering, like the murmur of distant voices. At first, we thought it was just the wind or our imagination, but the whispers grew louder, and they seemed to be coming from the walls. We couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. We tried to ignore it and went to bed, but the whispers followed us. They were coming from inside the walls, and it was unnerving. We kept hearing phrases like, "Help me," and "You shouldn't be here."
It was terrifying. We tried to reassure each other that it was just our minds playing tricks on us, but deep down, we both knew something was wrong. We decided to investigate and went to the attic, where we found an old, dusty diary.
What did the diary reveal?
The diary belonged to a woman named Sarah, who had lived in the cabin many years ago. Her entries were filled with descriptions of strange occurrences, unexplained noises, and the appearance of ghostly apparitions. She wrote about her fear and her attempts to uncover the truth behind the haunting. One entry in particular stood out. Sarah had written about a woman with long, dark hair and a pale, gaunt face. She appeared in the mirror and whispered, "Help me." Sarah had tried to find out more about the woman and the history of the cabin, but she never found any answers. She disappeared shortly after writing the last entry. We were both shaken by what we read. We decided to leave the cabin immediately, but when we tried to open the front door, it was locked from the outside. We were trapped.
Panic set in. We tried to call for help, but there was no cell phone signal. We were completely isolated. The whispers grew louder, and the temperature in the cabin dropped dramatically. The air was thick with a damp, musty smell, and the shadows seemed to come alive. We heard footsteps on the stairs, but no one was there. The walls and floorboards felt unstable, as if the cabin itself was alive. We could feel a presence in the room, something cold and malevolent. It was as if the cabin was trying to keep us inside. The doors and windows started to rattle, and the lights flickered. We huddled together, trying to find a way out, but every exit was blocked.
That's when we saw her, the woman from the diary. She appeared in the mirror, her eyes hollow and filled with sorrow. She whispered, "You have to help me." We were paralyzed with fear. The woman stepped out of the mirror and approached us. She was real, and she was right in front of us. She took our hands, and we felt a surge of cold energy. She led us through the twisted corridors of the cabin, each room more horrifying than the last. We saw shadows moving in the corners, heard the whispers of the dead, and felt the weight of countless souls trapped within these walls. The woman led us to a small, dimly lit room. In the center was a wooden chair, and on the chair was a bound and gagged woman. It was the woman from the mirror. Her eyes wide with fear, she was struggling against her restraints, her voice muffled by the cloth in her mouth. She pleaded with us to help her, her eyes filled with desperation. We reached out to untie her, but as our fingers touched the ropes, the room began to shake. The walls cracked and the floorboards splintered. The woman's eyes widened in terror, and she screamed. Suddenly, the room was filled with a blinding light. When we could see again, the woman was gone, and we were back in the small, cluttered room with the ornate mirror. The mirror was shattered, the pieces scattered on the floor. The whispering had returned, louder and more desperate than before.
We were in a state of shock. We tried to find a way out, but the cabin seemed to shift and change around us. The walls were closing in, and the air was thick with the scent of decay. We could hear the whispers of the dead echoing in our ears, and the presence of the woman was still with us. We realized that we were not going to make it out alive. The cabin was a prison, and the spirits of the past were not going to let us go. We were trapped, and there was no escape. The last thing I remember is the sound of the wind and the whispers of the spirits. The cabin was dark, and the air was cold. We held each other, trying to find some comfort in the darkness. And then, everything went black.
That's a truly harrowing experience, Emma and Lily. Can you tell us more about the cabin and its history? Did you find any other clues or information that might explain what happened?
After we found the diary, we tried to learn more about the cabin and its history. We visited the local library and spoke with the librarian, Mrs. Thompson, who had warned us about the cabin. Mrs. Thompson told us that the cabin had a long and dark history. Many people in town believed it was haunted. The last occupants, a family, moved away suddenly, and no one has seen them since. Some say they were driven out by the spirits that haunt the cabin. We also spoke with an elderly man named Mr. Johnson, who had lived in the town for over 70 years. He told us about the cabin's dark past. The original owner, a man named Thomas Blackwood, was a recluse and a bit of a madman. He conducted strange experiments and rituals in the cabin, and many believe that the spirits of the past are still trapped within its walls.
That's quite a chilling history. Did you find any other clues or artifacts in the cabin that might have helped explain the haunting?
That's quite a chilling history. Did you find any other clues or artifacts in the cabin that might have helped explain the haunting?
We found a few more items that added to the mystery. In the attic, we discovered an old, dusty book of rituals and incantations. It was bound in leather and filled with strange symbols and runes. We also found a small wooden box with a rusted key inside. The book and the key seemed to be connected to the diary. Sarah had mentioned them in her entries, saying that they were part of a ritual to set the spirits free. We realized that the woman in the mirror, the one who had been bound and gagged, was a spirit trapped in the cabin. We decided to try the ritual, hoping it would help us escape. We followed the instructions in the book, placing the key on the altar and lighting the candles. We recited the incantations, our voices trembling with fear and determination.
As we spoke the final words, the room was filled with a blinding light. The air crackled with energy, and the ground beneath us began to shake. The spirits of the past appeared around us, their forms ethereal and translucent. They were the souls of the people who had been trapped in the cabin. The woman from the mirror appeared before us, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, Emma and Lily. You have set us free." With those words, the spirits vanished, and the room returned to its normal state. The air cleared, and the darkness lifted. We felt a sense of relief and peace, but we knew that the cabin would never be the same.
That must have been an incredibly intense and emotional moment. What happened next?
We were still in shock, but we knew we had to get out of the cabin. We tried the front door again, and this time it opened. We ran outside, the fresh air and the sound of the forest a welcome relief. We didn't stop running until we reached the edge of the forest. We were exhausted and scared, but we were free. We never looked back and never returned to the cabin.
And what about the authorities? Did you report what happened?
We did. We reported the cabin and the strange occurrences to the local authorities, but they were skeptical. They said there was no evidence of anything unusual, and the cabin was just an old, abandoned structure.
We knew they wouldn't believe us, but we had to try. We also spoke with the librarian and Mr. Johnson, hoping they could help spread the word and warn others about the dangers of the cabin. Despite everything, we couldn't shake the feeling that the spirits were still watching us. We both suffered from nightmares and anxiety for months after the incident. It took a long time to recover, but we are both stronger for having faced our fears.
That's a truly harrowing and powerful story, Emma and Lily. It serves as a reminder of the unseen forces that can lurk in the most beautiful places. Thank you for sharing your experience with us today. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel.